Yeah, I mean, I knew it was time to catch up again because it's been a few months since our last podcast together.
Mm.
But not only that, you have a book coming out.
Yeah.
Tell what? Tell me more like about that, like real quick.
Yeah.
What the heck?
So, I mean, I wrote a book. It's coming
Yeah.
out on April 6th.
Okay.
It's kind of been a practice of delayed gratification and patience. It was supposed to be published last year. But it sounds a bit weird when I say this out loud, but it's a memoir. It's about my story of as a professional athlete, but also my recovery from a pretty traumatic injury, a series of injuries that I had. And so I think of it more of just an open discussion and a demonstration of the power of resilience. And
Gotcha.
I think it's an invitation for those that read it to, take the challenges that they have in their life, and it's an invitation to learn from them instead of being broken or defeated by them.
Yeah, yeah. Your story is one that I've had, the pleasure of learning more of just kind of through doing this podcast and getting to know you more. But I do think it's being amplified a bit more in the ultra running community as well as the endurance community in general right now. But for our listeners, I mean, if you want to go into your story a little bit without, I guess, giving away the whole barn on the
Well,
book, and just
yeah.
kind of tell our listeners a little bit more about your story because I think it's important.
Yeah, and I mean it's something that has been, covered. This was something that so I mean it's not, a surprise like
Yeah, no
it's not.
spoiler alert. She has her own TED Talk, which we'll link to in the show notes too.
Yeah, so I mean, there all of this information is out there, like what happened to me. And basically in 2017, I got my start in ultra running in this type of running called sky running. And so it's very technical terrain. Usually you go straight up the mountain, straight down. I got my nickname the Hilly Goat for this style. And I'd primarily race in Europe. And so I was competing on the world's sky running circuit. And I had been doing this since 2014. And in 2000, I would kind of I would teach during the fall, and then in the summertime I'd go and travel and race. And in 2017, I was on this world circuit, and I'd actually risen the ranks to number one in the world. I was actually ranked. That was like my goal for that season,
Yeah.
and I was crushing it. And then during a race in Tromsø, Norway, I was running on this ridge on some terrain that I'm pretty comfortable running on. It's about third class. And a rock gave way underneath my foot, and I ended up falling off of a cliff, basically, a mountainside, a total of 150 feet.
Oof.
And yeah, so I had never broken a bone up
In
until
your
that point
like in your life.
in my life.
Yeah. Oof.
Maybe a tailbone. I bruised it or something. But like I broke 14 bones. Um and was airlifted. I was lucky to be alive. And so that was a the beginning of this incredible journey that I've been on since that moment, August 5th in 2017. Um yeah, when,
Yeah.
kind of being face to face with you're at the top of your athletic game, your career, and then in 1 second it all changes. And I was, came to grips with, okay, am I going to be a professional athlete anymore? Can I even learn to walk again? Let alone, compete. Um, and yeah, so the story, it starts there, and then it kind
Yeah.
of takes you through what I learned and some of the recovery process and more of an insight into my mental state and how I kind of tackled these big problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the premise of the book. I guess the first question is, why did you write it? Like, what were you compelled? Why were you compelled to write this book?
You know, selfishly, I wrote it because I writing has always been an outlet for me. It's something that I've done. I mean, I'm a scientist, so from like lab reports to just writing sticky notes. I mean, you should see my desk right now; it's ridiculous. But so I was a neuroscience major, and I was of the firm belief that if you wanted, I've read many studies that you're far more likely to do something just because you write it down.
Yep.
And so I think that the written word, and not just typing, like the written word is powerful. And I think just throughout, my history as an athlete and as a person, writing has always been a very cathartic and just a space where I could be honest and process. And so throughout my recovery, I had started it. Writing was a way that I could just be honest and real. I could be ugly. I could be happy. There was no judgment. I could just get all my thoughts down on the paper. And I started publishing kind of blog posts of, what I was going through, kind of updates just to kind of update the community about what was going on, in my recovery in my life. And um, I just decided to kind of undertake a bigger project because I thought it was healthy for me to write down all of these things that I learned, but then also um, the community that I interacted with throughout my recovery, virtually or in person. I feel like there's so much common ground. I mean, you don't have to have fallen off of a cliff to relate to what I've been through, and for me to relate to what you've been through. So I think that not only was it selfishly I wanted to kind of process what happened to me, but I also think it could help someone else.
Hmm.
Whether they're
Hmm.
going through an injury themselves or a life change, a move, a job change. I mean, heck, I mean, working at home and, the pandemic is a huge challenge that's changed many lives. So,
Yeah, no, and that's it. And I kind of want to get into that a little bit more. But I mean, so kind of for yourself, but also to teach others. I mean,
mhm,
you're a teacher kind of by trade anyway. So it seems like writing the book and getting that into the hands and the ears of people to give them some resources that helped you in the way that you did it is,
mhm.
yeah. I mean, that's a fantastic, both two fantastic reasons why you would write a book, Hillary. But I'm kind of curious. I mean, like, so you're now an author, you're a professional ultra runner, you're a great co-host, by the way, a coach, a TED talker. How'd you do it? How'd you write a book while still being like I don't know if you're still ranked number one, but top
No.
three in Skyrunner world. I don't know. How'd you do it? Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, well, the sky running, well, I did still place second even when I did fall off the cliff and didn't finish the season, but so there's a,
There's that. Yes.
point on my board for that. But I don't know. I mean, I think that here's how I view it, and priority versus sacrifice. I think if view things I just don't view things as that I'm sacrificing it. I'm prioritizing
Hmm.
all of these things in my life. And so if they're a priority, it means I'm going to give time to them. And if they're important enough to me, then I'm going to make time for them. And I'm a person that likes to do many things. I think I operate, you know, probably at a pretty high level of, or a threshold of what busy means.
Yeah.
um, but it just kind of flowed. I actually, granted, I did start writing the book when I had a little bit more free time. I had broken my ankle in 2019. Um,
Did you do that running as well, or
Yeah, running in the
yeah,
snow. So this was, like, after I, recovered from the accident,
yeah.
but, yeah, so, I mean, I had a little bit more time, but actually, I mean, anyone who's been through recovery knows that it takes a little bit of a different beast of, like, cross training and doing PT, so maybe it actually might not have been, I had less time available, but that's to say that that was definitely a spark, in the
Hmm.
process, but yeah, I mean, and it's this idea of priority versus sacrifice, this idea that I don't think I was sacrificing time because I had just prioritized everything. And to me, it didn't feel like work. It felt like a fun process to do. So even if I was, up at 6 and reading and writing a little excerpt, and then I would go on my training run, and then I'd come back and I'd be technically working until, I went to bed that night. It didn't feel like
Yeah.
that to me.
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, no, when you're doing what you love to do, it's hard to call it work, especially kind of in the way that you also process information through writing, through sharing your story, and it's also you're learning more about yourself as well. So I totally hear you on that. And I think as I haven't read the whole thing yet, and Hillary was she's going to send me a book. She did promise me, but I was able to read the PDF a little bit, and what I was recognizing throughout is like the book. It's more than just telling her story. There's deep human connection woven throughout it with the struggle, the perseverance, and like she said, her community that helped her do it. And I think, with that being said, I kind of want to turn it over to you, Hillary, and have kind of give you a chance to read a section
Okay.
of the book that you think is powerful in that degree. So,
Oh boy, this is
oh
so
boy,
exciting. I'm holding my actual book in my hands. It's so cool.
are you going to put on your fake glasses with me so we both look smart? Or
Fine.
yeah, that's a YouTube enhancement option. If anybody
Putting on my
is,
glasses,
that's right.
so, you know, buckle up
Yes,
because it's gonna
buckle
sound
up. Here
better
we
now.
go.
Okay, so this is from one of my, favorite chapters of the book.
Okay.
The chapter's called "The Power of Belief." Despite the challenges of my injuries, I'm certain that my best physical and mental days are ahead. That being the best athlete I can ever be is only possible because of the challenges I face now. Believe. Sometimes I think the mind is the strongest part of an athlete. It's not the legs or lungs or heart, but the mind. Strength comes from how an athlete handles pressure and pain and problem solves when things go south. I wrote this mantra down 2 weeks after I was told I would never run again. Believe. Believe your best athletic days are ahead of you. Believe in your power. Believe in your strength. Don't stop believing. Some days I looked at these words and shook my head. How could believing make any difference? Believing doesn't do my training for me or get me up a mountain on a hot summer day. My legs do that. My strength does that. My body does that. I needed to be strong physically. Believing, I thought, had no part in getting me there.
Oh, yeah. It's a powerful thing, and thank you for sharing that, by the way, because it's both like not only from your book, but came from your brain, that was then applied right to like just this daily grind of injury recovery, back to injury,
Mm.
back to racing, back to world domination, like we've talked about.
Mm.
um but I think, in all seriousness, that belief of whether you can do the daily tasks that are mounting up, or whether you can recover from this injury, or whether you can bounce back from this pandemic. um it's at the end of the day, it's really the stuff between your ears that we got going for us.
Mm.
Genetically, some of us are more gifted than others. You can work really hard and gain a lot, but still, we've done podcasts on this too, in terms of like, at the end of the day, like what really matters, right?
Yeah, and I think I've been open about this if for anyone who, follows me or who I'm coached by or who I coach, um, is mental health. Um,
Yeah.
and I work with a sports psychologist, and it's something I recommend for many of my athletes if they're, for any goal that they have. And it's just to echo that point that you just made. It's what's between your ears. And it's something, I also, one of my favorite books, Endure by Alex Hutchinson. he has a whole subject on this, and how, you start at the start line, and, as much as you can nerd out and be a great coach and prescribe these amazing workouts and be so dialed in to, threshold or VO2 max and maximize these numbers. You could have a start line of 10 elite athletes, 20 elite athletes with, VO2 maxes with, basically the same. They're within, less than 1%. But one person's going to win. And that's not necessarily the person that has the best quote unquote numbers or who's had the best quote unquote training period. It can be that athlete who, had problem solved better when, especially in an ultra marathon race when things don't go to plan. I think, maybe this is, I speak more to this from an endurance side, like the longer the race, right? Because I
Hmm.
think it can be a little bit more cut and dry when you're talking about a 5K or a,
Well, I
but
mean, it's a different type of persistence and grind, and it
right.
reminds me of, and I quote Dean Golich on this podcast quite a bit. For those who don't know Dean Golich, you probably never will because he stays in the background, but he's a fantastic coach, and I remember talking to him one time, coaching elite athletes and trying to figure out like what's the difference here, the
Mhm.
winner and the loser and the gold versus silver, and he's like the one who can suffer more, right? And now I want to clarify that just a little bit because those who love suffering get their suffer on, and I'll just go on suffering, do it. It's not so much that because you got to get a lot of other things real right,
Right.
then be able to suffer at a competitive speed and then be able to do it while playing the game of whatever it is that you're doing, be it sky running or
Mhm.
5K running or criterium racing or ultra mountain bike stage race, whatever it is. But yet, I think as you go deeper and deeper still, it is when you are suffering and when you know everyone else is suffering, what what's the speak? What's the self talk going on? Because how you digest the suffering, I think, is far more important than even say how you handle it and all this kind of stuff. Because if you just like grin and bear it and go, it's one thing. But if you can digest it and say, it's not going to last forever,
Mhm.
I'm going to get stronger from this. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, and that's exactly the point is, the whole idea. You're right, you have to be at a certain baseline, but then once you're there, the positive self-talk and how you
Mhm.
talk to yourself, it's it's powerful. I mean, there are even studies, it sounds ridiculous, but there are
Mhm.
studies I was reading, um, in my neuroscience PhD program, where there were like behavioral studies where they would talk like in a negative tone or
Mhm.
negatively to rats or plants, and their behavior would change, their growth would be stunted.
Yeah.
And, you
No,
know,
that's it, and that's solid across the board. And I'll try to find some of that research, and if you have some too, we'll put it in
yeah,
the show notes because it is very applicable. And I'll say this: positive self talk won't make you into a world champion. However, negative self talk can get you off that podium.
right.
And also, let's bring it down to the reality of most of our listeners too. I just started working with an athlete who needed to lose weight, needed to get in shape, and needed to just do work. And doing 3 by 10 threshold, that was suffering for him. And there was a lot of negative self talk going on in terms of how he can't do it, hurts so much, he's a loser, all this kind of stuff. And it's just like,
Mhm.
change the talk, change the talk. You
Mhm.
can do this,
Right.
do it now. And once he did, he was able to then conquer it. And then now we're doing training blocks. He's losing weight, FTP's going up, and
Mhm.
and it's both physical and cognitive, but between the ears, it's just, it's way more important than I think many of us coaches and athletes acknowledge it on a regular basis. To me,
Mhm.
I guess.
Yeah, and it doesn't, so here's also something that I wrote about in the book too. I mean, and maybe you've noticed this also, is that I wasn't always positive. I'm so this is a distinction. Like, it's that belief, I think, is a deep-seated belief. So it's this belief that you have that even if you're having a bad day, like we all do, especially if you're going through some sort of injury, um, even if you have a hard day, you still have that seed of belief and you still have that peace that's overall positive, right? That belief in yourself.
Yep.
Now, even throughout my recovery, this was also important. Like when things sucked, I was able to speak to that and to say that, okay, this is hard. I don't want to be here. This is awful. I wish this didn't happen to me. And even though I felt all of those things, I still got up in the morning and I still did my PT and I still had that belief that, okay, even though I feel like crap today, I'm doing what I can to, build on this for tomorrow because I believe in that in the future.
And Hillary, I'm going to pull a quote from the book because I think it resonates, right now to what we're talking about. And it's, quote, injuries force us to relinquish freedom. They require extreme patience. And right now, I think it resonates because the pandemic has changed the world and the landscape for many people. And there's some of our listeners and some, fellow humans just going through some deep, dark shit right now. So, have you felt parallels between your journey and what you write about in the book to what's going on today, perhaps?
Yeah, honestly, and this is one of the main reasons why I wrote this book. And as I mentioned, one reason was it was a cathartic process for me, but the other reason was it's an invitation to invite others to view challenges and setbacks not as the end, but more so a beginning and a new start.
Hmm.
And I know not everything can be fixed with hard work and dedication. I understand that. And I understand definitely there's certain things that have, happened this year and, that are currently ongoing with the pandemic and, social unrest. Um, However, I still think that it's a call to people and their communities to come together and not let something tragic kind of define them, but to create something from it and learn from it and create new starts. And I think that's the definition of resilience, and that we're all surrounded and I think human struggle is universal no matter what that
Hmm.
is. And something else that's universal in the human experience is resilience. And I think humans are probably the most resilient, species out there. And yeah, I honestly, I'm not sure if you've, you know, it's not just a recovery book. I don't think it's not about,
No,
you're an injured
no.
runner, read this. It's more of like, all right, you're dealing with hardship, which, everyone experiences. Um, it's like I think writing a book and reading a book. This is why I love reading. I'm an avid reader. I feel like it's a conversation that I get to have with the author.
Yeah.
And my even my favorite books, when I reread them, I learn something new each time because either I have a different perspective or I'm going through something different at that current moment and I pick up on something you know um, different that day or that year that I read this book. And so yeah, that's how I would say that it relates kind of globally. I know I'm not giving specifics, but it's just because every person's experience and every person's quote unquote suffering is different. And so if they read a certain chapter and resonate with it, I think it can definitely apply to what's happening now. And yeah, hopefully it can ignite this idea of that. You know, the end is it's not that it's a new beginning and it's a chance for a fresh start.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's spot on. And I was going to say, um, to the point where I was saying before, it's more than just, Hillary's story. It's just, it speaks to this global, or kind of universal, struggle that I think humanity does have. You can see whiffs of that and, um, it's definitely no handbook. It reads really well, and I guess not so soft plug for it right now. But uh, I don't know. I really have appreciated what I've read so far, and I wanted to kind of showcase that to our listeners. But I guess, normally, an author, once they get a book out there, they'll go across the country signing books and that kind of thing. Is that is that what you're going to do here, Hillary, or
Well,
what's next for
because
you?
because we are still in a pandemic,
Oh
I,
yeah,
uh I mean, hopefully things actually are opening up a little bit more in Colorado,
yeah,
and so, like, I can do in-person events maybe, like, later in the summer, but as of right now, I have some virtual events lined up, which is great, either, ranging from some local bookstores to, some run clubs, so, I mean, I have a website. It's hillaryallen.com, and there's actually for my book on the little tab. You can go there and click on if you want to like book an event near you, whether that's virtual or in person.
nice.
I'm a big fan of road trips, so uh, but yeah, so it's the start. It's the start of just getting the word out there, and then yeah, just different podcasts and just kind of getting just intimate conversations. It's actually my favorite. I wish I could, you know, do in-person events everywhere just so I could talk to everyone because
Yeah.
that's also the coolest thing is, learning from people that you talk to, um, and interacting with, the community. Um, but yeah, and another way that I'm kind of celebrating the launch of my book is I'm doing this thing called Everestine. I'm sure, the cyclists, I mean, I think it started with you guys.
Yeah, I know what it is,
Yeah.
but
So
for somebody who's like,
I'll
"What's an
explain.
Everest?"
So
Yeah,
in the running world and in the cycling world, when you Everest something, you are trying to reach 29,032 feet, which is the elevation, the altitude of Everest. And so how we do it, since well, most of us don't live in the Himalaya, we basically can
that's true.
repeat the same trail, um, basically go up and down until we reach said elevation, and it has to be you have to go up and down the same trail. It has to be a full lap. So if like, at after lap 12, you're at 29,000 feet, well, you've got to do a whole nother lap to reach the to reach the Everest, even if you overshoot it. And so I'm doing that. It's actually something I've never done on foot. It's definitely hard on foot because of the downhill that you have to incorporate into it. Um,
I was just gonna ask. I mean, like Hilly Goat, you're really good at going up.
yeah.
How are you coming down?
Oh, yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. I was just making
I
sure.
like it actually. The technical trails are more engaging for me. So,
Yeah,
I like rocky trails to come down.
yeah.
Yeah, and so, and I have these things called trekking poles that I've like, can use my little sticks to help me like balance over rocks and jump them.
Sweet.
Um, so so this is cool, some cool symmetry. So I was doing a lot of my recovery in Boulder, Colorado, where I'm based. And
Mhm.
so Green Mountain is a pretty famous mountain here. And so I've chosen to Everest on Green Mountain because it was where I did a lot of my recovery. Green Mountain was kind of where I got started in trail running. Um, and it's where I was like, oh man, I can do this. Like steep running is awesome. And it's where I was hiking before I could even, start to run again. And so I'm doing it there. It's going to take 13 laps to Everest. Um, so it's not the steepest mountain in the Boulder skyline, but I don't care. It has emotional significance, so I'm sticking to
Yeah.
it.
Yes, I
and
like it.
but my book has 14 chapters, so I'm actually going to do a bonus lap.
Awesome.
Yeah, but right now it's like really crappy. There's ice and snow, so I need to wait for
Yeah,
a bit until
yeah.
it all melts out.
You've already kicked it down the road, right? Because of the snow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It was actually yeah. So it's going to be sometime in April. I've just got to keep an eye on that ice because
yeah,
it can get pretty gnarly. It's
yeah.
north facing. Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes, and so both in the cycling world and ultra running world, we call it Everesting.
Hmm.
And if you kind of like say it slowly, it is ever resting, which is
Everlasting.
ironic because it's the exact opposite. But maybe that can be your mantra. I don't know. Ever resting. You
I
just
think I like to think about it, yeah, it's like you're ever I don't know, you're ever resting. It's like, what is your Everest? Like, what is this thing that you I don't know, you're not gonna stop resting until you kind of accomplish it.
yeah, yeah, something like that. I think there's something there. I don't know. You can write about it. Uh, so not only do you write books, you write newsletters. I guess I've been enjoying those too. If people do want like just to mainstream your consciousness, I guess with some of these writings, can they sign up for the newsletter and like
Yeah.
how does that work?
So if you visit my website, there's
Yeah,
just an easy way for you to kind of, find information on the book, and all of these events that I have going on in association with the book, or, Everestine. It's just for my email list. So if you're part of
okay,
that club, there's some cool things coming out too, like a run book club. So that's an exclusive you just learned about. So if you want info on that, yeah, you can sign up for that stuff.
awesome. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, Hillary, man, I'm glad that we got together again and did another podcast, and didn't anticipate that it would be with this book release. I had other, we both had other cool nerdy topics to talk about, but we'll push those off for next time.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was a pleasure.